For this pitcher form, I need to make a handle. I struggled for years with handles. I actually avoided handles for many, many years. And it was because I couldn't pull a handle that looked convincing. I couldn't pull it off the pot. So I developed something that looks like a pulled handle, but that's actually hand built. So to make that, I'm going to start by rolling a very simple coil, but you can see that I'm actually rolling the coil so that it's thicker on both ends and thinner in the middle. Having it be thinner on the inside or on the middle section is going to help it curve and make a really nice natural curve. I often think about the human body when I'm thinking about handles. This thick section and this thick section are very much like the way that my hand and my shoulder connect. So you can see my actual shoulder is much like this part, where it's the largest part. That's where my arm connects to my torso. That's really important that this part here be thicker than this part, because this is where the bend is. So just like the human elbow, the actual elbow of the spout itself is also the thinnest section. Then I come back and my hand that's touching my hip is also thick. Once I have rolled this, I'm going to throw it down and I'm going to flatten one side of it. So now this one side is flat, this side is round. And I can also, if I want to start stretching it, I can throw it in a direction. I'm still going to pull this handle, so I don't need to throw it too much, but it's nice to go ahead and get it started. I'm also going to push down in any cracks that I see forming. I'm going to smooth those out. Then I'm going to take my bucket of water. I'm going to hold the top section, and I'm never going to get this top part wet. Then I'm going to get the whole bottom 3/4 of the handle wet. And then I'm slowly going to start to pull down and smooth out the edges. After I've done that a few times, I'm going to go and I'm really going to refine that edge by using my thumb and my pointer finger, and I'm just going to work the edge of the handle. This articulates that edge much like the edge on the top of the pitcher itself, and also the edge that's on the end of the spout. This goes back to that idea that I'm going to articulate all the parts of the pot using the same form language. As I'm working this back and forth, the bottom of the spout moves a little, goes back and forth. So eventually what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to flip it and pull from this end. So to do that, I'm going to keep pulling until it dries out. I'm going to flip it and then grab this end. If it's too wet, I can dry it off with the bottom of my apron, and then I can hold it easier. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to work just on this edge part. Now I'm going to pull this section here a little bit longer. And I'm also trying to match the thickness all the way through so that it's all an even consistency. Now I'm going to flip it, go back to the top side, and you can see that handle starting to take shape. It's thicker here, then it goes thinner, and it gets just a little bit thicker at the bottom. At this point, I'm also going to go in and I'm going to thicken this out intentionally, make it as wide as possible, because that's the part that actually joins to the pot. It needs to be the wider part. So think again about the shoulder socket, about how thick your shoulder socket is. It has to be a really strong connection. Then if I need to tighten up the handle anymore, I can add a little bit more water, take a few final pulls, and then I'm going to lay it down on the table into the shape that I want. So to get the shape, I'm going to hold the very bottom and the very top, and I'm going to turn it, and I'm just going to let it make whatever natural shape that it makes. So I'm going to let the bottom go, and you can see that there's a natural shape that every handle has. If that's not the shape that I want, that's okay. I can go in and I can change the shape by pulling the handle left to right. Or later, I can actually push up from the inside here and make it taller. But I'm going to wait till I put that on the pot. So for now, I'm just going to put this down on the table, and I'm going to let that dry in the shape. I have a few handles that I've pulled. You can see that they've hardened up. so they will hold their shape. Usually I wait maybe about 30 minutes or an hour so that they're firm enough that they give me a very nice angle at the top there, and also so that when I cut them, that it's a very sharp cut. So what's left to do is I need to articulate this part of each of the handles, both the bottom and the top. And I have two separate ones that I've done here, so I'm going to articulate them in different ways. The first way, I'm going to use this cookie cutter tool that I used to articulate the very top of the pitcher. And I'm going to do the same motif. So I'm going to use the same motif that I did on the top of the pitcher. Essentially, when I cut it, it's going to look like a triangle. And I know from experience that I don't need this top section to be quite so long, so I'm going to cut that down. And I'm going to articulate the bottom in exactly the same way, which is another triangular piece. You can see now when I hold this up to the pot that there will be a relationship, especially on this bottom section, between the triangle here and the bottom point of that triangle there. So that's one way to do it, is to take some information that's already on this pot and reinforce that by articulating it with the handle. The second way to approach this is to bring in a completely separate piece of information that I'm going to add to this. So one of the things that I've looked at for inspiration is the bottom of clawfoot bathtubs. So I'm going to take a very similar technique, which is to cut it now with a round cookie cutter that has 6 lobes. When I cut this, I'm going to push down, but I'm not going to push all the way through. I'm actually going to go back and cut that with an X-Acto knife because it makes a better cut. So as I'm cutting that, I'm going to cut right around the impression that I made with that tool. Then I can just take this piece off. All of this extra clay down there could be taken off when I put it onto the pot itself. And I'm going to do the same thing. You can see I've already made a slight impression there. So I'm going to reinforce that by pushing this down again. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut it again with the X-Acto knife. So now I can compare these two. You can see the triangle versus this more round three-pronged approach. And in this case, I'm going to put the round three-pronged approach on to the actual pot.